Good evening. Welcome to California Today. I'm Liang Zhang. Here's a preview of some of today's stories. A bill for safe injection sites has passed legislation and is awaiting the governor's signature or veto. A group is calling on him to veto the bill. We'll hear the reason why. A university in California is cataloging when people oppose critical race theory. We'll look at how much opposition CRT is getting and what places don't want the theory in their schools. And as for other California universities, one expert says they are hiring a less diverse group of people, at least in terms of ideas. We'll hear how he describes diversity leads to tyranny. Of the many bills waiting on the governor's desk is a controversial one that would legalize programs marked as preventing drug overdoses. But opponents say these programs, known as drug injection sites, would do more harm than good.
A coalition of groups are urging Governor Gavin Newsom to veto a bill that would legalize drug injection sites.
One of the problems with injection sites is that the continuous use of them is quite low. The continuous use, the people who need to do this constantly, is only about 5%. And that's true wherever you go in the world. And the other 95% are out using their drugs wherever they are.
Senate Bill 57, also known as the Controlled Substances Overdose Prevention Program, would allow Los Angeles, Oakland, and San Francisco to launch, quote, safe consumption sites. Senator Scott Wiener introduced the bill in 2020. These sites let people use drugs under medical supervision. The intention is to save the drug users from dying if they overdose. But the bill has seen bipartisan opposition. Opponents say they usually become, quote, a magnet for drug traffickers, drug addicts, robbers, and homeless people.
Because addicts know the dealers are going to be there so they can purchase their product, and they operate under the feeling that it's a free zone. And that mix causes irretrievable tragedy.
We in this world of public safety understand the consequences and the human toll that it's taking, this drug usage. We see psychosis, people that are so heavily addicted, they are now psychotic and they have no rational ability to make decisions.
Schubert says they also see violence erupting in communities because of drugs and poor decision making. She asks Newsom to think about the children returning to school this fall.
Think about what it must be like for those children on an everyday basis to be seeing and witnessing hand-to-hand sales, open drug usage. And now we think it's somehow a good idea to have the government providing the resources and really aiding and abetting the continued use of such drugs as heroin and methamphetamine and fentanyl. If one looks at San Francisco County just during the pandemic, they had twice the number of fentanyl overdoses as they did COVID deaths. Twice. That is an astronomical figure that we need to be talking about.
They pointed out that places where drug injection sites already existed saw very few people get treated.
What's ironic is if I have a cold or a cough, I can go to a med clinic and get some help. And if I have a drug addiction problem, I need rehabilitation. Where do I go to? There's no place to go to. There's insufficient programs and insufficient funding for it. This does not work. It is not going to work.
They urged the government to invest in drug addiction treatment instead. The bill has been on Newsom's desk since last week. NTD reached out to Wiener's office for a comment.
A public California university is now tracking and making records of any opposition made to critical race theory.
A team at the University of California, Los Angeles has created a national database to, quote, track attacks on critical race theory. UCLA's Critical Race Studies program, part of the university's School of Law, developed the database titled the CRT Forward Tracking Project. Program researchers have screened 24,000 media articles since August 2021, counting 479 instances of anti-CRT activity. According to the data, most anti-CRT proposals have occurred in Florida, Virginia, Missouri, and the U.S. Congress. More than 20% of the recorded activity happened on the local school board level. Californians have used 5 out of the 8 proposed anti-CRT enforcement measures to push back on CRT at local schools. One instance was when the Placentia Yorba Linda School Board voted to ban the teaching of CRT in classrooms in April, ending months of debate in the Orange County District. Supporters of the ban said CRT is a divisive ideology that pushes a political narrative. But the UCLA program says that opponents are using the term CRT incorrectly. The school defines CRT as, quote, the study of systemic racism in law, policy, and society. Project Director Taifa Natalie Alexander said in a statement the project was created to help people understand the breadth of the attacks on the ability to speak truthfully about race and racism through the campaigns against CRT. Critics say CRT pushes a worldview founded in Marxism, analyzing all aspects of life through a modernized lens of racism rather than the dated concept of class struggle. The UCLA project is funded by a $400,000 grant from the Lumina Foundation, a private Indianapolis-based foundation with about $1.4 billion in assets, according to the nonprofit's website. Daniel Hall, NTD News, California.
California universities are striving to have more and more diversity on campus. This applies to both students admitted and faculty. One lawyer says it could lead to more division.
University faculty may be facing new types of segregation. That's according to Daniel Ortner, a lawyer at the Pacific Legal Foundation. He explained to California Insider's Siamak Karami diversity statements, which are required on college campuses, would group people by identity rather than treating them as individuals.
So it's requiring faculty to really pledge their allegiance to ideas regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion that are, politically toxic, politically divisive ideas regarding race, regarding equity. The idea that you need to treat students differently based on their race. Ultimately, in order to give some students a leg up, you need to treat people differently and divide them based on their race. That's the core of this DEI idea.
DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ortner says many universities have a rubric that looks for how a person expresses their awareness of race issues.
If you say what Chief Justice Roberts of the U.S. Supreme Court said, that the way to stop discriminating on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. Something simple like that. If you express a belief in color blindness, that everyone should be treated equally, you're going to get a low score and you're not going to get hired.
Ortner says many UC schools have been doing pilot testing where they only looked at diversity statements when hiring. If faculty did not get a good score, they would not be looked at for anything else.
You could be a Nobel laureate. You could be, have a theory to cure cancer. You could be Albert Einstein. It doesn't matter who you are, what your research is. You're not going to get looked at. You're going to get passed over if you don't have a good diversity statement. And so that, I think, is really frightening. It means, they're not looking for the best quality talent. They're looking for those that are most in line ideologically with the mission, with this mission of DEI.
Those who speak out with an opposing opinion or who are not in line with the school's ideas are often targeted for investigation.
There's a professor that I've spoken to out in Florida, for instance, at UCF, Charles Nagy, who, because he made a tweet criticizing the Black Lives Matter movement and criticizing some of the anti-racism efforts, he was interrogated for 9 hours by bureaucrats at the university. They asked him about every single statement he'd ever made in a classroom for 15 years in order to find a reason to fire him.
Ortner has been involved with multiple lawsuits surrounding diversity of thought on college campuses in California. According to Ortner, this hiring process will eliminate diverse thoughts among staff, and as a result, students would not be challenged with new ideas.
To watch the full program, find California Insider on YouTube or Epic TV on the Epic Times website. We're going to take a short break, but here's a look at what we got for you when we come back. A bill that would have ended mandated medical reporting of domestic abuse is on pause. One expert explains why removing mandating reporting could lead to much more abuse. As students head back to school, there are several changes waiting there for the teenage crowd. We'll have a look at what's new this year. And the food bank in Orange County talked about how they are handling recent inflation. We'll hear what they're doing to help out the community. That and more on California Today. Two Democratic Assemblywomen were working to end the medical personnel's mandatory reporting requirement of suspected domestic or sexual violence to law enforcement. The bill they wrote has since been placed on hold. A psychologist tells NTD that healthcare workers can often help someone escape violent situations.
Medical personnel would have no longer been required to report potential domestic or sexual abuse. That's what change Assembly Bill 2790 would have brought to the state. But AB 2790's journey through the state legislature came to a halt last week. Former San Diego City Attorney Casey Gwinn told the Times of San Diego he credits media coverage leading up to the Senate hearing for stopping the bill. The bill, authored by Democratic Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks and co-authored by Democratic Assemblywoman Cristina Garcia, sought to remove the requirement of healthcare practitioners to notify police of suspected domestic violence. However, Jean Cirillo, an attorney and psychologist, says medical professionals can help people stuck in violent situations get out.
What helps is if a third person in the form of the mental health professional gets in there and reports it and says, we have to report this. You need to be monitored. You need to join a group for abuser treatment, anger management, and then the government agencies will stay on them.
The proposed bill states that instead of notifying police, a healthcare professional should, quote, provide brief counseling, education, or other support, and a warm handoff or referral to local or national domestic violence or sexual violence advocacy services. Cirillo says mandatory reporting is important because some victims may often be too scared to reach out or tell the truth.
I had a couple that came to me and they came together. The wife had kind of dragged him into counseling as a last resort to divorce. And he was nice and laid back. If anything, he started to talk about the few times that she bit him, scratched him, pushed him. And, I thought these are all things that we do when we're in a clinch and we're trying to get away from the other person.
Cirillo says the wife just sat there quietly.
The next session, she comes alone. She's crying her eyes out, bawling, saying she was afraid to tell the truth because if she told the truth, she would have to live with him for the next week until the next therapy session. And she was afraid of him. First of all, she was afraid to leave with the kids. She was afraid he'd get the kids. She was afraid she would have no help financially because she had a child that was an infant, so she couldn't go back to work full time. But most of all, she was afraid of getting beat up or killed.
Wicks wrote on Twitter last June that mandatory reporting is keeping victims of domestic and sexual violence from reaching out for help. But according to Joyce Bilyeu, a domestic violence survivor and deputy director of the Sacramento Regional Family Center, victims rarely voluntarily report. She said, I have been working with survivors for 40 years now as a professional, and I have never once encountered a victim not wanting to get the medical treatment they needed out of fear of a report being made to law enforcement. AB 2790 is currently placed on hold in the Senate Appropriations Committee.
For students who are heading back to public school, there are a few changes that many of them can expect. Those include a lot of free food and later morning bells.
California public schools are seeing two big changes as the fall semester begins across the state. Both middle and high schoolers will start the day later, and all public schools will now provide free breakfast and lunch to all students. Under the Universal Meals Program, California is the first state to launch a statewide meal program. Food will now be prepared for about 6 million public school students. The change to lunches comes after Governor Gavin Newsom signed Assembly Bill 130 in July 2021. A budget report released right before he gave his signature expected the program to cost $650 million annually. Any costs not covered by federal reimbursements will fall to California taxpayers. In addition to free food, middle and high schoolers will start their days later than before. Public high schools can now no longer start class before 8:30 a.m. and middle schools 8 a.m. A 2014 study by the American Academy of Pediatrics recommended 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep for teenagers, citing health concerns. Newsom signed the change into law back in October 2019. A similar bill was vetoed in 2018 by former Governor Jerry Brown and received opposition from both the California Teachers Association and California School Board Association. A spokesman for the school boards said the change has led to a wide range of scheduling conflicts and listed that one solution is more spending on transportation services.
When times are tight, giving gets a little bit harder. That's what the head of the food bank in Orange County told NTD's Jackie Rios. She heard about how they are weathering the recent spike in inflation.
With inflation at its highest rate in several decades, coupled with supply chain issues, the cost of necessities are up, and our food banks are impacted. We spoke with a representative at the OC Food Bank, which feeds families, children, and seniors, to see how they're managing during these challenging times. The food bank's president and CEO, Gregory Scott, said that although Orange County is a place of both influence and affluence, there are still pockets of families who are struggling. The OC Food Bank is one of many programs run by Community Action Partnership, or CAP, of Orange County, with its mission to address hunger and food insecurities.
One of the ways I like to put in perspective, if we think 2019, in 2019, we did 23 million pounds of food. In 2020, once the pandemic hit and once COVID hit, we did 63 million pounds of food. So we almost tripled it in 1 year. In 2021, we did 41 million pounds of food. We also go through about 540,000 pounds of food every single week. And so again, so far this year, we've done 13 million pounds of food that's gone out to the community.
But things are not so easy now. Scott said inflation and supply chain issues in the country have been affecting their ability to provide food.
Now we're finding ourselves where we have to purchase 50% of the food that we've been getting. That's very different than 2 years ago, even a year ago, where now we are using our own dollars to go out there and purchase food so we can continue at the level that we want to really make a difference in the community.
One food product in short supply is baby formula. But even though it's the second highest requested item the OC Food Bank gets, they don't provide it. Instead, the OC Food Bank will refer out to their sister organizations. But one baby necessity that OC Food Bank does provide isn't food at all, it's diapers.
We do have diapers. We do have a major diaper bank. We're one of 5 food banks that also have a diaper bank throughout the country.
Like most nonprofits, the OC Food Bank not only relies on donations, but also on people donating their time through volunteering. Abraham Aguirre volunteers Monday through Saturdays from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and has his family volunteer on Saturdays.
We need help every single day, all week. So I invited to the whole community to come and help.
Ending hunger is a lofty goal made even more difficult during tough economic times, but the OC Food Bank continues to do all they can to provide food and more to Orange County residents who need a little extra help. Jackie Rios, NTD News, California.
Now to NTD's Thomas Christian for an update on sports.
I'm Thomas Christian, giving you the California Today Sports Roundup.
Following the righty sustaining a grade 2 flexor strain in his right elbow on June 10th, LA's Walker Buehler has decided to opt for season-ending surgery and will go under the blade August 23rd. After Buehler sustained that strain in mid-June, he spent the last 2 months of the season trying to recover enough to rejoin the Dodgers squad by the start of the playoffs. Unfortunately, that return does not appear to be in the cards this season for Buehler, as he will ultimately be forced to miss the remainder of the year. And so it is not yet known if Buehler will even be available for spring training in 2023 or in the 2023 season at all for that matter. Buehler's ERA was at a 3-year average of 2.93. He only got to play in 12 games this season for Los Angeles, but was a workhorse in their 106-win season last year, starting in 33 games. Rams head coach Sean McVay builds his offense around a dominant ground game with big linemen up front to create gaps in the defense for his premium running backs to rush through. The strategy brought LA the Super Bowl in 2022, but its ingredients are at risk of falling apart before the start of this season. The top two running backs on the Rams roster, Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers, are both dealing with injuries that are keeping them out of training camp before the start of the season, and neither of them have a particularly clear timetable as to when they will be returning. When speaking on the matter, Coach McVay said that it could be anywhere from 1 or 2 days to a week and possibly longer. The injuries on the two players are listed to be just some soft tissue damage, although both Henderson and Akers have been banged up before and have had to miss stretches of the season because of injuries like these ones piling up. Instead of the top two backs on the roster, the Rams are ramping up the workloads for rookie backup Kyren Williams out of Notre Dame and 24-year-old veteran Jake Funk. Cam Akers led the Rams in rushing attempts in the Super Bowl last season with 13, for which he totaled 21 yards. Henderson took another 4 attempts and rushed for 7. Neither Funk nor Williams totaled a single rushing attempt during the Super Bowl, and Funk had just 2 rushing attempts for 5 yards in the total postseason in 2022. We will have to see now how this blip in training camp will impact the Rams season going forward. Sandy Alcantara pitched 7 scoreless innings and JJ Bleday slugged a solo home run to lead host Miami to a shutout win over San Diego. Manny Machado, a Miami native, went 2 for 4, but the rest of the Padres combined had just 3 hits. Alcantara allowed just 4 hits, all singles and 2 walks, striking out 7 batters as the Marlins snapped a 4-game skid. Joe Musgrove took the loss, allowing 8 hits and 3 runs in 6 innings. Marlins 3, Padres 0. Julio Urias tossed 5 scoreless innings to win his 10th consecutive decision and pay surging Los Angeles to a shutout victory in the opener of a 4-game series at Milwaukee. Urias allowed 4 hits, striking out 6 and walking 2 to win for the 10th time in 11 starts since his loss on June 12th. Freddie Freeman and Gavin Lux homered for the Dodgers, who won for the 13th time in 14 games. The Brewers, who scored just 7 runs while losing 2 of 3 at St. Louis over the weekend, were shut out for the 10th time this season. Dodgers 4, Brewers 0.
As always, I'm Thomas Christian, and thanks for tuning in.
That's all we've got for you tonight. We'd like you to join us again on California Today every weekday at 8:30 p.m. Make sure to check out our broadcasts on our California Today webpage. You can find it at ntd.com/California-today. You can also find all of our top latest clips there, ready to share with friends and family. Send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or through our email, california.today@ntd.com. I'm Liang Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.